Young Mr. Hull. Young Mr. Hull was Caleb Howe Hull, her younger son, just 17 at the time. I almost didn't want to be there as they kissed and cried and hugged for long, long minutes. In that hugs time, a sea turtle could have told the moon the rhyme of the ancient mariner. Finally, they separated and talked. She, "Now, Caleb, I'm glad it's you. We need to get clean fast and get to the family. They're not off boating, are they?" He, "No, no, Mom. God, I'm glad. They're there all right. But, oh, Mom, you have caused such trouble." "Mom, I have to say it. I know you'll explain, but you really messed us all up, Mom. Really. You have no idea how much trouble you've caused. There, I've said it. Jonah made me promise." "Oh, Mom, yes, let's all go." I saw he was as courageous in his honesty as she was. I immediately was attracted to the diffident but clearly confident young man managing a mighty office at 17. He quickly left us, the unknowns, in the private office. Good thing the receptionist had been a new one. Gossip would not spread yet. No one else saw us, and she was warned and paid off. 4 good horses appeared from a nearby stable. One was loaded with blankets, some food, and some clothing, and 2 rifles. It was a long ride, almost 3 days, starting at noon. We stopped near sunset, July the 3rd, at a clear pool in the stream, and washed off Fort Jackson and all those boxcars, as I had once washed off Gettysburg in San Francisco Bay. We donned hastily gathered ill-fitting clothing, it was clean, and went on. No one wanted to talk, only to go on to the family. The rounded gray rocks we rode through looked like whales' heads, cauliflowery, barnacled, lichen-encrusted right whales, smooth finback whales, wrinkled sperm whale cliffs, and warty humpbacks in pink granite, riven by time. Under a gibbous moon and warm night, we pressed on. In the moonlight, rocks and streams seemed ever more like whales' fluffed bows, strangely motionless amid the ever-teasing foam as we stepped carefully among them. At morning, we came up to the big house with its porches. Unseen, we tied our tired horses ourselves and slipped in the back door through the kitchen. At the door to the big comfortable living room, Caleb paused, not daring yet to knock. It was a moment to shake the world. Here, a knock might bring the whole house, the clan, crashing down. It was still theoretically possible for us to turn around, go away, never to be heard from, with only trusty Caleb to know. Caleb paused, hand raised to knock, afraid to break the bubble of peace in that house, perhaps. As in reluctantly jumping into a cold lake, this was the moment of strained pause before the violent thrashing. Caleb seemed to wait frozen for a pause in the conversation. In that stillness through the door, I heard the following. "Well, Charles, you certainly have a fine cottage here. Gridley and I agree. It is grander than ours on our little North Fork fishing lake. And here your lake is older and has fine scenery. It reminds me of Lake Muskoka in Ontario, where I once caught a fine muskellunge. We bought our lake. Imagine buying a lake. We bought our lake cheaply, of course, from the Pennsylvania Railroad, and we knew the dam needs repairs. Have to get to that. You're lucky here, Charles. I've often thought I'd like to be on a northern natural lake like yours here. But Johnstown is friendly and so close to Pittsburgh." As the voice trailed off, the fates acted. Caleb nodded, and we entered, heads high, to face our fate. The room was still, all faces turned to us 3. In the big stone fireplace, an early morning blaze crackled. I thought, That seems rather extravagant. Then I realized this is July 4th. Our great holiday of celebration. 80 years of hypocrisy. The whole family must be up early to prepare some entertainment. A family picnic or illumination or dramatic production. Perhaps, my racing runaway brain said, the servants have been given their liberty for this day alone. In all these surmises I proved to be correct. Please forgive an old man my indulgent readers. To tell the tale, I include all I learned later from Kathy and elsewhere in my long road to 1905 in San Francisco. This scene, as young Mr. Carl Jung would say, was archetypal. The speaker whom we'd interrupted sat in a place of honor near the fire. He was Thomas Marshall Howe of Pittsburgh, a first-time and honored guest of the Hull family. Near him sat his wife, a placid but watchful woman, and their young daughter Clara, 7 or 8 years old. She played quietly with a young nursemaid. The other seat nearest the fire was a short fainting couch or sidelong chaise longue, on which reposed the family head, the weakened but strong-chinned, clean-shaven Charles Helmut Hull. A slight tremor came and went in his right hand, where it rested on the wicker armrest. Near the back of the room sat a wicker armchair mounted on small wheels, having handles behind for pushing. It was known as an invalid's chair. In it sat an invalid, a robust man who could not stop shaking. Daniel Hull, Catherine's husband. On the arm of his chair leaned a young man of 21 with eagle eye of black and a short mop of unruly black hair to match. This was Jonah Kukar Hull. Thomas Howe was a portly, clean-shaven, elderly man of dignity. He wore a dove-gray seersucker's vest and light summer pants to match. Old C.H. Hull had on a black satin vest and pinstripe trousers. Near Daniel and Jonah sat a lively couple, Samuel Gridley Howe and his lovely wife, Julia Ward Howe, old friends of the Hulls from Boston. They were godparents to Caleb, who was named for Caleb Howe, a favorite ancestor of the Howe clan. So close were these two families. Samuel Gridley Howe was known as Gridley by his brother-in-law, especially here to distinguish him from Charles Hull. Gridley was younger than his brother Thomas and wore a full dark beard and matching herringbone vest and trousers with suspenders. My great-great-aunt Julia needs no introduction here or anywhere. Her name and words reverberate through the ages, especially in places where people, with or without God's help, are attempting to trample out the vineyards where the grapes of wrath are stored. She was radiant, lustrous red hair and 2 long braids, a calico gray dress, and a little matching bonnet. Her face was glowing, white with rosy patches, and she looked more keenly at us than even Jonah did. Everything seemed to her to be of infinite interest and infinitely to be loved. I felt courage and womanly loyalty to family and children and all beings. All this I felt in one instant on first seeing Julia Ward Howe. The Howes were frequent house guests of the Hulls. The large Howe family had at least 2 branches in America and several in England. Charles Gridley had invited his distinguished brother from Pittsburgh with his wife and a child to brighten the company. The bright and beloved Clara, his favorite daughter, as she later said. The magical house on the lake I remembered as clearly as a lakeside dawn, and I was given the good fate of visiting it again, or its resurrection, only in another place, another time, in Clara Howe Brown's house on Lake Muskoka, after the infamous name of Johnstown had become obscured again, her 3,000 dead all buried. What survived the Johnstown flood were the fortunes of Carnegie and Howe and all the North Fork Fishing Club without a lake, like the Pittsburgh Golf Club without a golf course. But whoa, Mule, my bitterness has far outrun our story. In that room of stunned faces, nonetheless, decorum was observed. It was, to me, admirable Yankee and American restraint and civility. Mr. Young would call it Presbyterian and Puritan repression. The most animated person in the room was Clara, who sensed with her child's clarity that this was an astonishing event, of which she knew nothing and wanted to know everything. The most frightened person was her nanny, Helen Aloha. The keenest eyes were those of Jonah and old C.H. Hall. Catherine poised herself before the fire with gigantic dignity. She faced them all. My beloved family, she began firmly, and dear friends, old and new. I wish first to present my dear friend and lover. She looked directly at her husband, then quickly to her father, and back to me. My beloved Jack, named John McGonigal McGackey of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. After this confident start, she faltered, poor woman, but only slightly, briefly, and went on. We had discussed and rehearsed these moments in fever and fervor and clarity, in sickness and in health, day and night. Everyone present seemed to be more alive and aware than ever before, or since, perhaps. Truth is a powerful medicine, and we have been promised it will set us free. Kathy said, I have learned how precious the plain truth can be. For you, the truth is that because of me, $50,000 and a fine ship are lost. A slight gasp of surprise from old C.H. And the company has nothing to show for it. For us, for me and Jack and 50 others, she looked directly at me, afraid to look elsewhere, and my eyes sent bolts of God's faithful lightning. Truth is also a weapon against injustice. She said, for us, the truth is that we liberated money that had been unjustly and sometimes cruelly extracted from helpless people and used it to create joy and love and support a society, a family, if you will, which practiced democracy and freedom, the freedom for which Tom Paine inspired our forefathers. I am glad that my friends Mr. and Mrs. Howe are here, as they are witnesses who have proved their love for their fellow man. I know, sir, of your many and strenuous efforts toward emancipation and abolition of slavery over many decades with Mr. Garrison and Mr. Frederick Douglass, and of your services for blind people. And I know, dear Mrs. Howe, of a song which came unbidden to your lips, I have heard. Julia looked down, ardent, loving, and troubled. A song which inspired millions with you to complete a great and terrible work. I even know in my newfound clarity, Mrs. Howe, of the misgivings which you must feel as a mother and a woman about the slaughter which you must feel you have abetted. Julia blushed deeply, head down. Much of this means little to all of you, and I do not even know some of you here present, but I dare not pause. I might collapse. Please forgive me. Then she did collapse into a chair, weeping. Julia rushed to comfort her. The other Howes were introduced quickly, and I boldly seized the time to continue, here in the Academy of Athens, an impartial dissection of the sins of all of us, of capitalism and slavery and exploitation and liberation, I suppose. Ladies and gentlemen, I am unknown to you all, and surely regarded by some as the downfall of your Catherine, and of your whole family. Yet, here I stand before you, having come many thousands of miles, without compulsion, with my dearest friend Catherine, who is fairly well in health, to confess every one of our doings, of which we are not ashamed. I looked at my weeping Cath in red-headed Julia's arms. No, we are not ashamed. Please listen. I, like her, am young and scared of your judgment. I'm only 24, yet I am, or I was, a third-year student at Princeton University in good standing. Please hear us out. Remember, we have come through fevers and starvation recently, like our poor war-torn land, and we wish to tell our tale before we lose our will or our senses. Please forgive our rush of thoughts. It is the fruit of our enthusiasm, for these are indeed the times that try men's souls, as Tom Paine said. I paused for breath and to calm myself. I said to myself, steady, Jack. I thought of Papa and our two faithful black servants, the horses, Lover and Gypsy. I went on speaking in academic terms that I hoped would be understandable to these Harvard and Princeton men, as I surmised, and their educated families. Little Clara was all ears. I prayed for strength. It came. I said aloud, I, for the defense, wish to ask you, what is money? More specifically, what is your money? Where does it come from? And is it more proper for it to remain in your hands or to be transferred to ours or to belong to Barbary pirates if Jefferson didn't kill them all? Steady, Jack, I thought. I thought of my calm yet burning Papa and his calming chew of black plug tobacco. I wished for a pipe of hashish. I said, Adam Smith, in The Wealth of Nations, I believe, said something like, we must trust the invisible hand of the market. In other words, if people are truly free and unpressured, they will exchange goods and services to their mutual satisfaction, and all will be distributed accordingly to everyone's satisfaction. Or so I understand it. My family respected Smith. One of my relatives is named Adam Smith Gordon. Steady, stick to the point, Jack. And yet, he and perhaps all of us missed something. This was pointed out by a man named Karl Marx of London, a German Jew, I believe. Truth knows no distinctions of race. He said, capitalism must always have an invisible victim, Mother Earth herself. Thinking again of Papa, I went on. My people are farmers like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Now, in farming, a farmer cannot expand indefinitely. There's only so much land, and do what we will, corn is corn and wheat is wheat. They take a season or two to grow. They can't be rushed and cannot change instantly. But capitalism, by its nature, must expand or die, so they say. That is like a tree which must grow or die, yes, but a tree has roots which draw on the soil and leaves to harvest the free sunshine. What does capitalism have? It must expand, and its roots are draining the earth's coal, iron, trees, water, whales, and so on, without limit. A man or a horse can eat only so much, but a corporation can eat more and more and more. The only certainty is that it will eat more tomorrow than today. And what it eats cannot grow back. Unlike a wise forest, unwise capitalism takes resources and destroys them. where the forest lives on its own cast-offs. A farmer need not make a profit, which to a corporation simply means taking money from someone whose labor created it and from the all-giving earth and transferring it to people who did not create it. Never mind how their capital made possible their corporation. Earth might say, if she could speak, their corporate endeavor should not exist at all, for it makes difficult or impossible the smaller, kinder, unselfish, non-profit generating acts of families and loving groups. Corporations give orders. Their slaves of employees and customers obey. Love is outlawed as non-profitable because love gives for no reward. Exhausted, I let red-eyed Kathy take over. I slumped to the floor and sat panting. Arthur's gray hat slumped over my face, propped up on her dear legs as she continued our joint lecture, our plea. She said, "Now listen, Father, and all you hulls. Now listen, Father, and all you hulls. I have served you, fed you, and clothed you, and worked for the company because I loved you all. I never really wanted a salary or growing wealth. I just wanted us all to be happy. But you, Father, you tricked me, even as you put more and more of the company into my hands. And I wanted to help in all ways. But you tricked me, Father. Do you remember, Father, my visit to the New Brighton, I think, when I was 10? He sat up straighter, but his hand trembled. He spoke firmly nonetheless. Yes, daughter, I do remember. It was the Moncton, not the other ship, but no matter. I know what you shall say next. And I say here and now, you do well to say it here and now. Let Jonah and Caleb in the house hear it. Yes, and Helen too. The nanny looked up gratefully. Very well, she said grimly. My dear family, as some of you know well, our family fortune was made largely on slave trading. An audible gasp was heard. Yes, it's true. And my grandfather was one of the inner circle, along with other families like the DeWolfs, Livingstons, and Browns, who polluted our great universities with slave money, slave ideology, and even let there be rooms for slaves, small, mean rooms, at all our colleges, where students can learn of our equal rights, unalienable, given by God, while their servants were bound by chains of law and ignorance. Her eyes flashed. She glared at her father. That is not all. Father confided to me long ago with tears that he had traded slaves, and he vowed he had repented and would never more profit from nor encourage slavery. He begged me to keep his secret. I did. I'm sure he never told you, Mr. and Mrs. Howe, or did he? Your compassion is great. Yet I feel Father needed your company too much to pay for it in the coin of honesty. Were you afraid, Father? He glared at her. Well, perhaps I am wrong. But Father, I know more. You told me more. Our fast and glorious clipper fleet hauls the fastest precious loads of tea to New York. But you yourself told me we also supply opium to San Francisco Chinatown, and to the railroad workers who are kept in thrall by it, and to the black market in New York, where half of it until recently flowed south. Both armies were equally in need of that which would make their poor boys sleep and not regret so much the horrible crimes they were all forced to commit, north and south. Do not forget, Not only Chinese take our viper, opium, into their bosom. For the moon wound. Do not forget, not only Chinese take our viper, opium, into their bosom. For the wounded, it makes life worth continuing. It's also expensive and profitable to some. I stood up suddenly. Catherine, I have something to add. Mauna Lola wanted to say this in this company, for his people's sake, but it is my duty to tell all of you what he told me privately at our parting, Kathy. Faces around were puzzled. I plunged on, a bone between my teeth. Opium was brought to Fiji, to Tahiti, to Samoa, and the Marquesas, and elsewhere, to keep the Chinese workers asleep, and to fatally weaken the natives and their love of liberty, so they would be willing servants of capitalism. Lolo said his granny Nailani told him, after she met Kathy, that C.H. Hull ships had carried the opium. They enforced a monopoly. Guns and opium were smuggled together and used together against addled brown workers. A white family named Hart acted as tools in this. One of them was known as the Boy King of the Cannibals. But that self-serving white myth was inaccurate. So Harts hid the Hulls, and Hulls hid their hearts, and Hulls hid the hearts, and Hulls hid their hearts too. I pulled back from hysteria. Opium devastated Polynesia and made Hulls rich. The ships had false nameplates, false flags, false crews, false hearts, and true guns with true aim, and deadly to brown and white alike. Hulls were camouflaged and Hulls hid their hearts again. Steady, Jack, I thought. Stop rambling and hating so much. I let Kathy take over again. She said, Father, you do not know what we did with your money, which is my money too. So I will tell you, we harmed no one, except Fort Jackson, I thought. But that wasn't us. We learned and practiced art. We taught and performed Shakespeare for many. We formed a choir and an orchestra, performed daily, cheering many people. We had a circus troupe. We all learned seafaring. We studied and recorded notes, all lost, I thought, on many animals, producing results unknown to science, which they, scientists that is, would benefit greatly from learning. I do not exaggerate, Father. If this be grand larceny, at least you should let us tell you more. Now I think at last we are finished. She looked at me and I nodded wearily. After a long pause, Charles H. Hall replied. He was slow and grave. His anger, seen earlier in his flashing eye and tremor, was still. His head hung, more in careful deliberation than in wrath. As all eyes turned to him, the patron, he spoke carefully. Daughter, your words and your partner's, Jack's, have softened my heart, my old heart. Now I'm able to feel pride that you came all this way, in the face of arrest and fever and hardship, and that your thinking has caused me to rethink much of my life right now. You are my true daughter, Catherine, and worthy of your position as my beloved heir. You are the last woman of my line as of now, and I realize, daughter dear, just how much I love you and need you. I can see how you thus honor me and all of us. Let us spend this day together in peace and joyful reunion, as we all give thanks for our liberty, God's precious and inalienable gift to us all. I will think and pray for us all, Tomorrow I will answer at length to you, and I feel sure you, my fellow hulls and halls, will feel as I do, that our punishment must be tempered or canceled, but a better way is possible. Now, Catherine, come to the arms of your feeble, sinful father, I beg of you. God is good. Amen. Daniel's face was streaming with tears, and Jonah held his hand in both of his own dearly. This un-Ahab-like speech brought tears of joy all around. I wept and prayed as Kathy and C.H. clung together. Then, weeping and laughing and praying, Hulls and House put us into separate, roomy, white beds. Oh, what wonder of wonders! A clean, soft, warm bed where policemen could never find us. As I dropped into heavy, dreamless slumber, I could see out the old-fashioned window the four hulls trooping together over a wooden bridge to the small, green summer house on a small islet. Jonah pushed his father's wheeled chair. Caleb had his arm protectively around his grandfather, supporting him. Across our bedroom, Kathy already snored in her bed. That looks like a conference, I thought vaguely. And then I thought no more. I awoke refreshed and sprang out of bed. Dusk was just beginning to lower. Across the lake waters, the descending sun lit up a shifting path of pickled golden chips, leading me on in glorious promise to what else but a watery grave. Even this curious thought only made me laugh. I crept to Kathy and lightly tickled her until she woke, giggling. We put on our ragamuffin clothes and betook our ragamuffin selves downstairs to the kitchen. There, amid wood smoke and bacon odors, a red-headed angel, the renowned Julia Ward-Howe, handed us steaming, fragrant cups of coffee. Again, father and daughter embraced, and lovely Julia took me in her arms. I wish Kathy's mother had survived to see this day. Truth and justice had a chance today on this July 4th. Clara and Caleb and Helen begged us all to go with them to the summer house and see their illuminations. We needed no convincing, and soon I was carrying delirious Clara on my shoulders as her faithful horse, as she led us on to their fireworks show. There we sat, we two, on a big carved piece of white spruce, a love seat hung from ropes in the pleasant dark green open structure. No one wanted to wait until full dark to begin, so we began, sparkling in the darkling gloaming. Many wooden tripods had been set up on an even tinier islet 100 feet away, one of two nearby, dubbed 2x4 and succotash, after a child's favorite meal of lima beans and corn. On succotash, the tripods had tied to them bundles of firecrackers, Roman candles, etc., arranged to spell out words. The gathering gloom kept the suspense. I couldn't read the words. Through tears of joy, until Clara proudly lit the displays one by one, and the sacred words were revealed to all the still listening lake, and its creatures. First there was liberty, then orange and green peace, red and blue justice, but that one had a lot of duds. Then union, also some duds. Faith, glorious family, and finally exploding in all directions, love. We clapped and cheered frantically as Clara Howe and her Helen Alouette bowed and curtsied over and over. I picked up a spent little firecracker. Under its little red paper coat with Chinese characters, it wore a petticoat of white newspaper with English words, all blown apart. I wondered idly if the gunpowder was ours too, till I realized that lately America had had none to spare, and of course the Chinese had invented the damn stuff. Chapter 20. Clear sailing. Quote. This is a quote from Julia Ward-Howe from her proclamation at the first Mother's Day in 1872, which she organized as International Mother's Day for Peace. Quote, "Arise, all women who have hearts. Say firmly, our husbands will not come to us reeking of carnage or caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have taught them of charity, mercy, and patience. Disarm! Disarm! The sword of murder is not the balance of justice. As men have often forsaken the plow and anvil at the summons of war, let women now take counsel as to how the great human family can live in peace." End quote. The next morning, after a full and early breakfast, everyone assembled again in the living room. The three servants had in fact been given the entire week off. C.H. Hall was not a Scrooge, not quite. So we would not see the servants. It was for me like my childhood Christmas morning, in that we all ate quickly and no one talked of business until we were assembled with serious business at hand. And I suppose I did expect a pleasant present from the Halls, my freedom. Charles Hall spoke first, slowly and calmly. "Thank God who lets us all be together here in this home. I have slept on it, yesterday's talk, that is, and I feel the same today, as if a weight had been lifted from me. That weight was my resentment. Our company could survive a loss of millions if necessary, and our family could not survive without the love that Catherine and I are feeling for each other. Oh, I repent. I repent. The money I have made, it is true, was made in shame, some of it, and in denial. Denial. Yes, my Hal friends, I have not been frank with you. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Women like Catherine and Julia and my dear departed Eliza have often tried to teach me by their actions that love is the best policy in business as in courtship. But I was afraid. Money was needed in a surplus in case of just what is now happening, namely, our chief officers, myself and Daniel, are becoming incapacitated. My grandsons, it is you whose judgment I invite now. I wish everyone here to express their opinions if so inclined, including Clara and Helen. One more thing. As I've told Jonah, I've heard from Captain James Smith of the Smith Brothers line via telegram. He is ill with malaria in Atlanta. He supports your story in brief and begs me to withhold any judgment until he can return in a month or so. May God grant him recovery. Now, Caleb, I'd like to hear from you and Jonah next, when I'm done, and I ask please for the chance to speak again later, as the senior head of this family, who has much humility yet to learn. I have done, grandson. Speak fearlessly." Caleb crossed the room to stand beside his father and his brother. His cheeks reddened. "Mother, I never lost faith in you, although Jonah and I often argued about it. He'll tell you how he feels now. As for me, I cannot speak much. I'm young. All I can think of is joy that Mom has returned to us unharmed. You judge her, I can't. A mother who loves us as she does cannot be a criminal. Jonah, it's your turn. You tell him from me." He squeezed the hands of his father and brother. Jonah came next. "Mother," he said, "Caleb and I agree on your loving nature. But you went off and loved a stranger, risking a lot, and loving many strangers, who all seem to have ended up as poor as they began, or worse. From what little we've heard so far, even if no charges are pressed against anyone, which seems likely now, our money has just gone to a big party for you, Mom, and your friends. So what if you suffered a hangover when your venture collapsed? Here I was, working all night sometimes, to hold together a shipping line in distress. Please admit, Mother, that you deserted the family for a pleasure trip, a gamble on a young, penniless man without any high-flown ideas of a commonwealth of the seas. Wasn't that just a way to gather more like-minded wastrels to dissipate our long-built capital without helping anyone? Father and I agree, I feel, that we have put our trust and all of our best efforts into this company, not least so that we can perpetuate our family and the values which it supports in this troubled, unscrupulous world. Those values, however, do not include the right to take the bread which another has earned by the sweat of his or her brow, as our revered Mr. Lincoln said once. We must no longer deal in opium, nor in rum running, nor gun running, nor gouging shippers, nor, I say, even whaling. Let us let the poor beasts alone, as Mother says. Let us be honest traders in honest goods, and let us strive to serve our customers, not merely to profit from them. But as for you, Mother, I wish you would divest all your ownings and give them back to the company. That might even make up for the loss of the Vesta and the cash. Mother, let me and Father and Caleb and Grandfather run the business. Now we know that you never wanted to do it. Your heart is not in it if it ever was. And we now know that if we can do it without you. And I have to say, Mother, you are just not trustworthy to run around. You ran off without looking back. There, see, Mom, I have resented you. I still do. And I feel jealousy for Dad's sake. He didn't look at me. There, I'm man enough to say it, and I'm man enough to say, Mother, you're the best mom ever. You taught me to be honest like this, no matter what. You came back to us. Now do what your heart tells you, and don't fear any longer for your family, your company. We love you. Be free. Jonah, overcome, let go his father's trembling hand and rushed to the fireplace where Kathy sat on the floor next to me, lost in thought and with tears starting. She let go my hand. I moved a little aside, and Jonah and she embraced. At last. Finally, he reached out to take my hand, warmly pressed it, and then transferred his strong embrace to me for long seconds. Now I, too, was crying freely. He had become my brother, and we were to become closer and closer. He returned to the side of Daniel and Caleb and took forth a paper as he once more tenderly took his father's hand. He spoke. As we all know, Father has much trouble in speaking. Last night we were up late, as he dictated to me, as he asked, I'm now going to read those words. But first, Father, Daniel Hull spoke then, slowly and too painfully. My family, my time with you grows short. We shall not quibble about that. Hear my love, Catherine. Hear my loyalty, Father. He could not continue. Jonah read his testament. It seemed to me to be so eloquent that perhaps Jonah had edited or embellished his father's faltering words. No matter, they too were tenderly close and strongly resembled one another physically. One knew the other's heart always. Jonah read, My family, I have loved you and served you always, as my true Catherine has done. All my education and young experiences were directed by my God at meeting her and loving and serving her in this family of my brilliant, distant cousins. And yes, I knew of your father's sins and kept silent. For Charles's own sake, I felt, as my advice continued to be heard by him on other matters. Yet I was wrong. I often feel in my solitude that my living God has punished me with this palsy. Kathy beside me was weeping and softly moaning, stretching her arms out, head down, and shaking her head. No. Jonah went on, his father's hand in his. Catherine, I release you. For long now we have grown apart. How could it be otherwise? When my service to you seemed to dwindle inevitably, I found solace in working for this company. Paperwork I could still do, as you sailed the seas free of concern for me. This was good and proper, and I wished you to meet someone. Someone perhaps just like your lively, passionate, brave Jack. God bless you both. He smiled across the room through his tears. Then Daniel spoke aloud again. Now, Jack and Catherine, come to me for my blessing before I must leave you forever. We knelt by his side and we all embraced, Jonah and Caleb too, in a long golden moment of tears, as golden glints from the flashing waves illuminated us from the windows. Thomas Howe spoke finally. How much I am learning from all of you, my friends. My Lord is here with us. I have followed my path of business for my family and society. I often ask myself, especially when I am in the company of Gridley and Julia, I often ask myself if I'm doing enough in my life for my Lord. I headed Pittsburgh's defense against Bob Lee and his army, who was an honorable man perverted by honor into a rotten cause, whom I had sworn to kill. Now he heads a fine college, and no longer must I kill him. Thank God. And thank God the slaves are freed. Thank God for Julia's song in her heart, and my brother's heart also. For my own race, I have endowed in Pittsburgh a Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Building and Museum to our brave ones who made freedom spread at a cost, yes. He looked directly at me, and, well, he seemed to grow humbler from my eyes' contact. A Masonic building to preserve secrets which I dare not share, but which I deem of value to society. Are we Masons elitist, as they say? Yes, we are. Yet, we do good works for the people, too. I have helped found the Allegheny Cemetery, a place of beautiful repose and of meditation for the living. Does this serve the people, the slaves, the poor? Well, Jack, perhaps not. And I have acquired vast tracts of land and ores. I am on the copper board of Pittsburgh and served as mayor. Was this service, or was my time wasted? I hope to discuss these matters further with you and dear Kathy. May God grant it. He turned to his wife and said, and you, my dear, what have you to say? She smiled even more calmly and squeezed his hand. She shook her head slightly. I love you all. That was all. Next to speak was Samuel Gridley Howe. A decent pause followed each speech in this council without anger or shouting or haste. I was reminded of the Aleuts and the Patags and the Creeks. All happy families and groups are alike, as Leo Tolstoy has said. Samuel said, I am glad to be here today. If only our Congress could deliberate as we do, perhaps we could live in peace. Perhaps. I, more than most, can speak of the power of words when backed by brave deeds. He bowed slightly in our direction. Our Liberator magazine, newspaper, and the oratory of Frederick Douglass, my bosom friend and ally, have moved hearts and hands to resist injustice. For this I am glad, although the work of liberation is not yet finished. And we have used a great evil, war, to fight another such evil, slavery. We must not again, ever, be forced, as John Brown prophesied, to repay each drop of blood drawn by the lash with one drawn by the sword. Never again. I too, Thomas, feel at times that the remedy I promoted, war, is as bad as the curse of servitude without hope, as the Israelites also might have concluded, perhaps, but this was not ours to decide. Before God I say it. and our work is not over. Even apart from the bigotry of the South, still extant in John B. Gordon's so-called Ku Klux Klan, someday that man may become governor of a still secretly defiant Georgia. Beyond that, beyond the corrupt freedmen's bureaus in our West, the mass killing, enslaving, and demoralizing of our Indian brethren and sisters goes on. I thought in a flash of the Taos Pueblo and Espy's tales of their courage and rebellion and unity. Perhaps that is where I must wander in search of our lost commonwealth. Ridley Howe went on. My darling wife wrote a poem, which we all know by heart, and hearts were moved. I pray, my new and old friends, you revolutionaries, that you may in your singing touch hearts also, and we all may study war no more. Now I wish, oh my heart, oh Julia, that you would speak. Catherine whispered to me, and we both rose. Please, family, she said, we want to hear Julia. Yet please let us sing for you first. This was granted. Julia's eyes glinted more than ever. We sang then, and the room joined in very good tune. God bless Stephen Foster. While we seek love and pleasure and count our many joys, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a song, a sigh of the wind. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. The house rang with echoes. In silence, we again took our seats. We had been singing with our arms around one another. I was reminded of the night when Captain McNaughton sang Amazing Grace. Julia Ward Howe began to speak. She said, now I would like to pray with all of you. We joined hands where we sat on the floor and on chairs. I held Clara's pink, sweaty little hand in Kathy's. Almighty God, we thank thee for bringing us together in your name. May your mercy and your words guide us here as always. For you have told us to forgive our friends 70 times, 7 times. May our thoughts be of your love and of the needs of all our race, your suffering and loving children. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. As my eyes opened, she spoke. I wrote my poem, The Battle Hymn of the Republic, as God willed it. It was on a long, sleepless night, and I could not rest until I rose from my bed and wrote down the words. In that terrible year, 1862, my song, set by the troops to their song, John Brown's Body, seemed to give a further momentum to the vast machine of destruction which had been activated like a juggernaut. With President Lincoln, I felt the pain of the deaths, and as he must have, I felt responsible. I tended the wounded. I felt their pain and smelled their foul wounds, fruits of foul war. Oh, never again must mothers weep for their sons whose careful rearing is wiped out in an instant for a goal which seems far off to the dying. You know, Jack, of what I speak. Yesterday, my sister Catherine confided to me of your home in Gettysburg and your wounded Southern brethren. Wear your gray hat proudly, Jack. You have earned it. I too wish your Arthur could be here. He could not wear the cowardly white robe of the Ku Klux Klansman. My life is now devoted to the women who despise war and their well-taught sons. Women must be allowed to decide if your sons must kill or die. And as for the young men, well, I feel, Jack, that from now on, at least, though perhaps not always in the past, young men like you who refuse military service are the pioneers of a world without war. Pioneers must explore new territory. Some is stony, some thorny, but sometimes by the side of a weary, winding, endless road, a pilgrim will drop a seed which falls on good ground and yields 100-fold. From such may peace grow. May you too, Jack, and dear familiar Kathy, go on in your way of peace. And last of all, Jack, I wish for you that you may find in the bosom of your family the love and acceptance with which this family has blessed you. And I am part of that. I wish for you, son, that you may be able to return with your beloved to your home. Please go to Gettysburg. They all pine for you sorely, I know. A man of your sensitivity, grace, and charity cannot be despised for long by a family as good as yours. Go home, prodigal, even if you must wander again. My love and prayers will go with you too, always. In the stillness following this, Clara let go of Helen's hand and on tiptoes kissed me on the cheek on my tears. She was very eloquent. Then Charles Hall spoke again. Julia has spoken for me, for us all. I need say no more at this time. Go to Gettysburg, Jack. Take Catherine and our blessings. Yes, Daniel's true. I hope someday to greet you, Jack, as my son-in-law on your wedding day to my only daughter. But if, like Moses, I am not fated to cross the river and see that promised land, still I will remember this day and how you too have shown us that you are married in love and before God and all of us. God bless you. Let us get to know you more. And so it was. Somehow I was thunderstruck. The most I had hoped for was to leave Kathy safely here and make my ragged way home to Gettysburg, to endure the condemnation of my family briefly before seeking onward to Taos and beyond, for a land that I called the New Buffalo, where wild animals roamed free and a small group of people could form a group and raise corn, mud houses, and children. But now a new yet old world shone before my wondering eyes. To travel home with her and with the blessing of the Hulls was far more than I deserved, I had thought. I guess I was way off. Hallelujah, hallelujah, I am free at last. I hope that now, or very soon, I may complete the task I have set myself of to bring this story to the world. I think you may not need to know all about my life that goes on yet. Suffice it to say, Papa and Mama took me in with tears. My oldest brother Tom died at Petersburg, where my brother Andrew lost part of a hand, but he still plays the banjo and plows. I plow also as seasons turn, like Jefferson and Adams did in retirement, one southern, one northern. Our horses May and June weren't so bad, so skittish anymore. They had matured in my absence. Kathy and I had no children, but we adopted several. And Caleb and Jonah are my beloved brothers. Yes, even in 1905. In Gettysburg we too lived, and after Daniel died, we married in the Falling Spring Church, Presbyterian of Chambersburg. I attended there with Granny the funeral of my grandfather, Robert Calvin Gordon, who was named for my great-grandparents' favorite preacher, Robert Calvin Horner of Falling Spring. And if you're getting confused again about who I am, don't be. I'm back to plain Robbie Gordon, 68 years old, here in Hawaii, as I prepare to fly back tomorrow to my beloved home in New Mexico, where I have a little settlement of 5 or 8 people who help me and each other and don't pay any rent. We call it Peace Island. We all smoke pot except the children. Peace to every one of you. The end.